Welcome to this SecOps webinar about how to fill gaps between ITOps and SecOps teams. I hope that you're all having an interesting day. And my name's Steve Salisbury. I'm a product marketing specialist for Runecast, and I hope that today I can help create an understanding about how you can make your teams more efficient and proactively work together to secure your environments. I'd just like to mention that if you're joining for the first time today, please check out the other sessions that are happening this afternoon. There's been some really interesting sessions this morning, and yeah, make sure that you jump in there and have a look, and there might be something of real interest that can help you in your careers or your daily working lives. Let's start with having a look at a few challenges that modern enterprise have. So 62% of companies expect more compliance involvement in cyber resilience in the coming years. The interesting part here as well is that 62% of survey respondents consider moving from traditional to manual processes to a data-driven audit. So this is an immediate challenge, not only as an organization, but for the teams within those organizations as well. Because if 62% of organizations out there are still doing the issue remediation manually, that's a huge task for them to undertake, and something that's going to become a real problem coming up in the future for them, and probably is a real problem today as well. And obviously, if we don't have the correct tools to remediate, then if we see the average cost of the data breach among companies surveyed, 4.24 million per incident in 2021. And Gartner predicts that it costs about $5,600 per minute for downtime. So from an organizational perspective, this is really interesting that organizations are not taking a more proactive step into making sure they're automated. So 78% of companies are expecting annual increases in regulatory compliance requirements. So this is not your in-house compliance. This is something like ISO 27001, GDPR, or NIST. And these compliances do change over time. There will be more work that needs to be done. And of course, if you're being audited, then you need to be able to stay on top of this as well. So again, extra work for teams. And as we look at this extra work for teams, more than 80% of companies are deploying to cloud. So we have some companies with just on-prem, people are running their public clouds, their private clouds, hybrid clouds. So this, as we start to move into utilizing the cloud, and if you've got your workloads running on-prem as well, then this is increasing the workload and increasing the pressure that's going to happen for teams. But let's talk about how ITOps teams and SecOps teams, what their immediate challenges are. And so there are many challenges which ITOps and SecOps teams need to overcome. I've been in calls with enterprise organizations where they struggle to get their teams to work fluidly together because they have separate budgets, different priorities, and they have separated visibility into environments. So there's a communications breakdown there. And also this causes processes to become disjointed and therefore take time to overcome. One of the struggles when I've been talking with organizations is that they can't get the two team, like the management teams, to agree to, or even be able to put their budgets together to work with some single source of truth, to be able to streamline their tool sets. And obviously, this is a problem for the team's communication. We also need to understand that for many organizations, there may be 3 teams involved. in the process. So you have your ITOps, who may be looking after the VMware environment, your DevOps building and deploying containers, and SecOps looking after the company's security concerns. So let's break these challenges down individually and gain a deeper understanding of what we need to overcome. So ITOps teams will focus on keeping the environment running smoothly and preventing downtime. DevOps teams typically focus on development speed and continuous deployment, while your SecOps teams are concerned with identifying and mitigating the security risks. So the difference here in priorities can often lead to friction between the teams, and use of separated tools means, again, there's no global understanding about how to unify these priorities for each individual area. So this brings us to communication breakdown. So the culture within ITOps can be very reactive depending on tools used. As we saw in the first slide, 62% of organizations are just considering moving to automation. So, this puts the team in a very reactive mode. And they also get, requests from the security team to secure certain areas. Maybe it's an in-house framework. Maybe it's, again, something like ISO 27001. And this puts an extra burden on the team. DevOps is one of innovation and speed, so embracing failure as a way to learn and improve. And the culture within SecOps can be more risk adverse due to the serious implications of security breaches. So these cultural differences can make it hard for the teams to align with a single vision. Teams also have different technical jargon, so this makes communication and collaboration difficult. And these language barriers can lead to miscommunications, misunderstandings, and cause delay and errors in project work. So as I mentioned earlier, the use of different tools for different teams can lead to integration and communication issues. So for example, tools that IOPS use to monitor VMware environments will be different to what DevOps are using for continuous integration and continuous delivery, and might also not be compatible with the tools that SecOps are using for vulnerability scanning and threat detection. And this all brings us down to a general lack of understanding and some different training issues as well. So each team might not fully understand the challenges and requirements of the other team. And there can be a tendency for each team to believe that security is the other team's job. So as an example, DevOps might think that it's the SecOps role to ensure their deployments are secure, while the security team might feel that it's the DevOps job to build secure code from the start. And we also saw how each team's using separate tools, which means the teams need to be trained individually on their specific tool. So there's often no in-house training on how teams should communicate through the different tools. This also, brings us to a lack of understanding between the teams. And it leads to issues with risk management. So risk management for ITOps is often reactive. A current survey that we saw of the 62% of organizations are only now starting to think about getting automated processes in place, which means they're in a break-fix scenario. And as we all know, that's never an ideal place to be. Something goes wrong, you get some downtime. Then you have to spend time trying to figure out what's gone wrong, what the answer is, and only then can you actually do something about it. So this reactive way of working is not ideal at all. As I said earlier, DevOps it's often about taking calculated risks to involve and innovate, deliver quickly. And this can lead to deployments in production being full of vulnerabilities. And while SecOps is about minimizing the risk to prevent security breaches, it's difficult for the teams to secure all the workloads once they've been deployed. So these different attitudes towards risk can cause conflicts between teams and put extra pressure on all teams. And as an example of this, so if we have a look at the way people currently work, for DevOps, you design and plan, you develop and build, then you test, you deploy and release, and then the monitoring is going to happen. So this is a really difficult way of working with the security. And the velocity of DevOps processes can outpace the capabilities of SecOps teams. So the rapid development and testing and deployment cycles in DevOps, it can leave SecOps struggling to keep up, which leads to security checks being bypassed or overlooked. And yeah, we need to think about this in a completely different way and try and work out how we can actually bring all of that together. So all of this brings us into, unfortunately, a lack of shared responsibility. And there can be a tendency for each team to believe that security is the other team's job. So DevOps might think it's the SecOps role to ensure the software is secure, and SecOps might feel that it's the DevOps job to build secure code from the start. So I think for the pain points that these teams are feeling, let's just jump back into a quick overview here of exactly what we were looking at. And I'd be interested at the moment to just take a quick pause, allow you to just recap and soak in those challenges that we've seen. But also, let's have a quick look in the chat to see if there are any questions at the moment. So nothing at the moment, but I would be interested to hear of any of the pain points that you have that we haven't covered so far. So is there anything that you don't see here that you face on a daily basis that becomes a challenge between working with your team and other teams? So it seems like we've covered all the bases, which is great. Here's a question. How do you suggest breaking down the communication silos between teams? So we're going to get to that a little bit later, but getting the teams to, or I'll cover it in more detail a little bit later, but getting the teams to actually communicate on a daily basis is obviously a really good start, but also having tools which communicate with each other and having a system where it allows that communication is what we really need to be looking for. Okay, if you think of questions while I'm carrying on, please pop them into the chat. And if you have any questions at the end, when this session closes, you can always put them into the main chat area, and I'll be there watching and I can answer them there as well. What do we really need? To remove tools that separates teams, and we need to provide both teams with a single source of truth to enable clear visibility, which in turn creates a collaborative environment. So this kind of answers Jason's question a bit as well. And I'd like to apologize at the moment for the Runecast logo. I didn't have time to take that out. This is supposed to be not about our company, but about the object of the IT teams working together. So by reducing the number of tools used, we can cut down on multiple subscription costs, which frees up budget for all teams. Teams can be trained together. So if we're training the teams together, this means they can all communicate with the same language. As I was discussing earlier, there are communication breakdowns because they all use different jargon. But if they're all training together on the same tool, then they can use the same language and break down these communication barriers. So this helps us to align the priorities and manage risk in a much more proactive manner. And if we have just one single platform that covers everything, so security compliance, our container security, and the IT operations areas, then this means that there's one area where we can all see what's going on and communicate much better. So an example of becoming proactive this is a really good example. So for a DevOps team, the velocity of processes and capabilities of the SecOps team to keep up with them. And as I was discussing earlier, the fact that once it's been deployed, my containers might have vulnerabilities in them. They might be up for 2 minutes, they might be up for 2 days, but that means I've put something vulnerable out into the production area. So what we need to do is rechange our thinking and move to a shift left approach as well. So we go through the same steps, except after we've developed and built our containers, we then monitor and analyze them. So before I'm even testing, I'm monitoring and analyzing for vulnerabilities so that I can deal with the vulnerabilities, remediate these issues, and then obviously I'm going to monitor that again just to make sure that everything's secure and I can put that out. So then we can deploy that to test, deploy and release to production, and then monitor and analyze afterwards as well, just to make sure that if any new vulnerabilities come out, that we can stay on top of those. And that's going to reduce the workload as well for the SecOps team, because they know that everything being deployed is secure when it goes out. There just have to be some scans afterwards to make sure there are no new vulnerabilities affecting these containers. I think this goes back to the question that was asked earlier on. Unfortunately, the right mindsets for teams collaborating takes time to achieve. So many teams are not actually used to working, they're used to working autonomously. And as an example, many ITOps teams have their environments monitored by the SecOps team and are asked by the SecOps team to apply specific security compliance, whether it's from an in-house framework or from a security compliance framework such as ISO 27001, GDPR, NIST, etc. So this can cause, strangely, it can cause ITOps teams to resent the SecOps team, because it can feel like they're being given extra work and they don't feel maybe that it's, as we discussed earlier on, that it's their responsibility to be doing the security. So this is something that can be overcome as well with a single platform, because it gives everyone the visibility and it gives everyone the shared responsibility. So in order to change this mindset, operational changes need to be implemented, which provide the correct collaborative tools for the teams. And something else that can really help is to integrate the teams together. So instead of having 2 separate teams, we create a DevSecOps team. So again, this can come with internal challenges of how to merge the 2 teams, but it allows the teams to actually work closer together and to be more proactive to make sure the environments are secure. So as teams come together under a unified approach, the whole organization can start to embrace the cyber exposure life cycle. Excuse me. So together, to ensure shared responsibility, they can become more proactive in the management of environments and operational efficiency through this collaboration. So we can see from the pain points that teams face that operational efficiency is hard to achieve without a single collaborative solution to unify the teams. And as organizations start to consider automated tools, a single platform should really be the go-to choice to ensure operational efficiency. And as I was just saying as well, one single platform and one single team, these all help with the communication issues and really help companies to move forwards in a much more proactive way. So let's have a look and see if we have any more questions. And what are some examples of successful alignment between IT operations and security? Well, some successful alignment it does come through creating DevSecOps teams. I don't want to mention customers I've specifically worked with, but I don't think that's professional. But there have been customers that I've worked with that have amalgamated their teams into one, and it has actually helped them when they've got a DevSecOps team to improve the communication and to be much more proactive in their environments. So Laurie was referring to communication. So I think what you're saying here is that daily communication is quite hard if your teams are distributed, and it can be. It depends on the solution that you've got, because if you've got the correct solution in hand and everyone has visibility into the same issues that are happening in the environment, then you can use something like ServiceNow, for example, to connect to the solution and feed tickets off to people in that sort of manner. So that's another part of really good communication within companies. And then if there are any issues, yes, meetings are a great idea to see where you are, where you need to be. But if you need to do other communication, it wouldn't necessarily be daily. But of course, that part of great communication is the ability to reach out to people and not let things slide. So Jason's saying over communication is better than a lack of such. Definitely. If you're not communicating, then that it does lead into problems that we've seen in the webinar today. I would just like to say, please feel free to come and chat with us in the lobby. So if you have any other questions or you want to discuss something further, we can have a chat in the lobby. And I'd also like to mention that we want to keep the conversation going after today. So we do have a LinkedIn group, and you can join that group, and it means that we can keep conversations going in there after today when this platform is closed as well. So we've got a couple of minutes. There's one more question. How much do you agree with the statement, no organization is considered prepared with learning IT team? Looking at the current. So I think what you're saying is that there are no organizations that are actually prepared with training the security teams with the exponential increase in cyber attacks. And again, this comes down to, that's always about time and money for training teams, but it does come down to having the right solution that when a vulnerability is released, that information goes straight into the solution and enables you to be able to see that. But yes, you are absolutely correct. There's an exponential increase in cyber attacks. We do need to be very secure. We need to be very wary about what's happening in our environments, and we do need to stay on top of those vulnerabilities as soon as they're released so that we can make sure that we're secure. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining me today. I hope that you got something out of this, and please remember that there are more sessions going on this afternoon. So have a look at what's going on and join something that takes your interest. Thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of your SecOps day.